Introduction. The diary that changed everything. Emma never expected to find her life's purpose buried in a dusty attic box. While clearing out her grandmother's house after the funeral, she stumbled upon a leather-bound diary hidden beneath old quilts and forgotten photographs. What she discovered within those yellowed pages would shatter everything she thought she knew about the women in her family and herself. The diary revealed 3 generations of women who had systematically silenced their voices, buried their dreams, and contorted themselves into shapes that would ensure their survival in a world that demanded their compliance. Her great-grandmother had abandoned her artistic ambitions to become the perfect wife. Her grandmother had swallowed her rage when passed over for promotions, channeling her brilliance into making others comfortable. Her own mother had apologized for taking up space, even in her own home. As Emma read entry after entry of suppressed desires, unspoken truths, and dreams deferred, she recognized herself on every page. The same patterns of self-doubt that made her question every decision. The same people-pleasing tendencies that left her exhausted and resentful. The same inner voice that whispered she was too much whenever she dared to want something for herself. But buried within these stories of silencing was something else. A fierce, untamed, feminine wisdom that had survived despite decades of suppression. Her great-grandmother's artistic eye had lived on in her exquisite garden designs. Her grandmother's strategic mind had quietly orchestrated community changes from behind the scenes. Her mother's intuitive gifts had guided countless friends through their darkest moments, even as she doubted her own worth. That night, Emma made a decision that would change not only her life, but the trajectory of her entire family line. She would be the one to break the cycle. A revolutionary guide to reclaiming feminine power. This book exists to guide you through the same transformative journey that Emma embarked upon. A journey from inherited patterns of self-doubt and people-pleasing to authentic feminine power. But this isn't just another self-help book promising quick fixes or surface-level changes. This is a comprehensive roadmap for breaking free from generational cycles of silencing and stepping into the full expression of who you were always meant to be. The purpose goes far beyond individual healing, though that's where we must begin. When women reclaim their authentic power, they don't just transform their own lives, they become catalysts for systemic change. They raise children who know their worth. They create workplaces that honor diverse perspectives. They build communities that celebrate, rather than suppress, feminine wisdom. This book combines cutting-edge trauma research with timeless feminine wisdom to offer you a path that honors both your individual healing and your role as an agent of collective transformation. You'll learn to heal deep emotional wounds without spending years in therapy, develop unshakable boundaries that honor your feminine energy, and embrace your authentic strength and intuition without guilt or societal judgment. The ultimate purpose is to help you become the woman who breaks the cycle. For yourself, for your family line, and for the countless other women who will be inspired by your courage to live authentically. This book is for the cycle breakers. This book is written specifically for women who are ready to stop playing small and start living authentically. You might be the inherited doubter. You've carried self-doubt like a family heirloom, questioning every decision and second-guessing your instincts. You recognize patterns in your family line, mothers, grandmothers, and great-grandmothers who all seem to struggle with the same sense of not being enough. You're tired of apologizing for your existence and ready to break free from inherited patterns that no longer serve you. The exhausted people pleaser. You've spent so much energy managing other people's emotions and needs that you've lost touch with your own. Setting boundaries feels impossible because you've been conditioned to believe that your worth comes from how much you can give to others. You're ready to heal these deep emotional wounds and develop unshakable boundaries that honor your authentic self. The silenced intuitive. You have a deep knowing, a feminine wisdom that speaks to you, but you've been taught to dismiss it as too emotional or impractical. You've learned to defer to external authorities rather than trusting your own inner guidance. You're ready to embrace your authentic feminine strength and intuition without guilt or societal judgment. The disconnected achiever. You may have achieved external success, but something feels missing. Despite your accomplishments, you feel disconnected from your true self, as if you've been performing a role rather than living authentically. You're ready to integrate your achievements with your authentic feminine power. The generational healer. You recognize that the patterns you're carrying didn't start with you, and you're committed to ensuring they don't continue through you. You're ready to transform inherited trauma into wisdom, not just for yourself, but for future generations. If you see yourself in any of these descriptions, this book is your invitation to step into a new way of being, one that honors your full feminine power while creating lasting change that extends far beyond your individual life. Why this book is different: a revolutionary approach. While countless books promise to help women find their power, most fall into one of two limiting categories. They either focus solely on individual healing without addressing systemic issues, or they advocate for women to adopt masculine strategies in a masculine world. This book offers a revolutionary third path. Integration of science and ancient wisdom. This approach uniquely combines cutting-edge trauma research and neuroscience with ancient feminine wisdom traditions. You'll understand not just what to do, but why it works on both a scientific and energetic level. The methods are grounded in research, while honoring the intuitive, cyclical nature of feminine healing. Beyond individual healing to systemic transformation, most self-help approaches stop at individual change. This book recognizes that true feminine empowerment requires both personal healing and collective transformation. You'll learn how your individual journey contributes to larger systemic change, and how to leverage your healing for maximum impact. Honoring feminine energy rather than mimicking masculine power. Instead of teaching you to succeed by adopting masculine strategies, this book helps you reclaim authentic feminine power, the power of intuition, collaboration, cycles, and deep knowing. You'll learn boundary-setting strategies that honor your feminine energy rather than requiring you to become someone you're not. Expert-backed methods with real-world application. Every technique and strategy is backed by insights from leading trauma therapists, neuroscientists, and feminine wisdom keepers. But these aren't academic theories. They're practical methods tested by real women in real situations. You'll find case studies and examples that show exactly how these principles apply to everyday life. Generational healing focus. While many books address current patterns, this one specifically focuses on breaking generational cycles. You'll learn specialized techniques for identifying and healing inherited trauma, transforming family patterns, and ensuring that the changes you make extend both backward and forward through your family line. Sustainable transformation. Rather than offering quick fixes that fade over time, this book provides integration practices for sustainable transformation. You'll develop a personalized system for maintaining your growth and continuing to evolve long after you've finished reading. What to expect: your journey from silencing to sovereignty. This book will take you on a transformative journey that moves from the depths of inherited conditioning to the heights of authentic feminine power. Here's the path we'll travel together. The archaeology of your inner landscape. We begin by exploring the hidden terrain of your inherited patterns. You'll learn to identify the subtle ways that generational conditioning shows up in your daily life, from the voice that tells you to make yourself smaller, to the automatic impulse to prioritize everyone else's needs above your own. The nervous system revolution. Understanding how trauma lives in your body is crucial for lasting change. You'll discover cutting-edge methods for healing your nervous system and breaking free from inherited stress patterns that have been passed down through generations. The mother wound conspiracy. Perhaps no relationship shapes us more than the one with our mothers. You'll explore how to heal this foundational relationship and transform inherited patterns of competition, criticism, and conditional love into wisdom and strength. The sacred rebellion of boundaries. Learning to set boundaries isn't about becoming harsh or uncaring, it's about honoring your authentic self. You'll discover boundary-setting strategies specifically designed to work with feminine energy rather than against it. Rage as your forgotten compass. Women have been taught to suppress their anger, but rage often points us toward our deepest truths. You'll learn to reclaim your anger as a sacred messenger and use it as fuel for positive transformation. Recoding your relationship operating system. The patterns that show up in your romantic relationships often reflect your deepest wounds and greatest potential. You'll learn to transform your relationship patterns and attract connections that honor your authentic self. The Sexuality Reclamation Project. Reclaiming your sexuality isn't just about physical intimacy, it's about embracing your creative life force and sensual power. You'll learn to heal shame and step into full embodiment of your feminine energy. The Intuition Uprising. Your intuition is your birthright, but it's been systematically suppressed by a culture that values logic over inner knowing. You'll learn to trust and develop your intuitive gifts as a source of guidance and power. Dismantling the patriarchy within. The most insidious patriarchal conditioning lives within our own minds. You'll learn to identify and transform the internalized beliefs that keep you playing small and seeking external validation. The Matriarchal Renaissance. Finally, you'll learn to step into your role as a matriarchal leader, not by dominating others, but by modeling authentic feminine power and creating change through collaboration and wisdom. Throughout each chapter you'll find real stories of women who have walked this path before you. Expert insights that illuminate the science behind the transformation. Practical tools you can implement immediately. Integration practices for sustainable change. The time for half living is over. If you've made it this far, something inside you is stirring. Perhaps it's the same fierce feminine wisdom that survived in Emma's family line, waiting for someone brave enough to let it fully emerge. Perhaps it's the part of you that has always known you were meant for more than a life of self-doubt and people-pleasing. The time for half living is over. This book is your invitation to question everything you've been taught about being a good woman. To examine the inherited beliefs that have kept you playing small. To challenge the systems that benefit from your silence. And ultimately, to step into the full expression of your authentic feminine power. But here's what I need you to understand: this journey requires courage. It requires a willingness to feel uncomfortable as you outgrow old patterns. It requires commitment to your own growth, even when others might prefer you to stay the same. Most importantly, it requires you to trust your own inner wisdom, perhaps for the first time in your life. The women who came before you, your mothers, grandmothers, and great-grandmothers, did the best they could with the tools and circumstances they had. They survived so that you could thrive. Now it's your turn to honor their sacrifices by living the authentic life they may never have had the opportunity to claim. You are not just healing for yourself. You are healing for every woman in your family line who silenced her voice. You are healing for your daughters and granddaughters, born and unborn, who will inherit a different legacy because of your courage. You are healing for the collective feminine, adding your voice to the growing chorus of women who refuse to be diminished. The diary that changed Emma's life contained one final entry, written in her grandmother's shaking handwriting just months before her death. I pray that someday, one of us will be brave enough to live the life we were truly meant to live. Today, that prayer is answered through you. Are you ready to become the woman who breaks the cycle? Are you ready to transform generations of inherited trauma into wisdom? Are you ready to step into your authentic feminine power and change not just your own life, but the world around you? The journey begins now. 1. The archaeology of your inner landscape. Spotting your inner child's hidden wounds. Just as archaeologists create detailed maps before excavating ancient sites, understanding your inner child requires careful mapping of the emotional terrain shaped by your earliest experiences. Your inner child holds both your deepest wounds and your most authentic gifts, but societal conditioning often buries these aspects beneath layers of appropriate behavior and people-pleasing patterns. The process of identifying your inner child's hidden wounds begins with recognizing the subtle ways childhood experiences continue to influence your adult relationships, career choices, and daily reactions. These wounds often masquerade as personality traits or natural tendencies, making them difficult to spot without intentional excavation. The three primary aspects of your inner child. Your inner child isn't a single entity, but rather a complex system of different aspects that developed in response to your early environment. Understanding these distinct parts helps you identify which wounds need attention and healing. The protector child, the part that learned to anticipate others' needs to avoid conflict or abandonment. This aspect developed sophisticated radar systems for detecting mood changes, potential threats, and opportunities to maintain safety through compliance. The protector child learned that being good meant survival, love, and acceptance. She became an expert at reading rooms, adjusting her behavior to match expectations, and putting others' comfort before her own needs. Signs your protector child is active include chronic people-pleasing, difficulty saying no, constant worry about others' opinions, and the exhausting habit of scanning for approval in every interaction. This child believes that conflict equals danger and will sacrifice authenticity to maintain perceived safety. The rebellious child, the aspect that pushes against boundaries but often in self-destructive ways. When the protector child's strategies failed to secure consistent love and safety, the rebellious child often emerged as a survival mechanism. This part learned that negative attention was better than no attention, or that breaking rules was the only way to maintain some sense of personal power in overwhelming situations. The rebellious child might show up as self-sabotage when things are going, or making choices that go against your best interests. She's not trying to harm you. She's trying to protect you from disappointment by controlling when and how rejection happens. The creative child, your authentic self that knows your true desires and speaks your inner truth. This is your inner child's healthiest aspect. She holds your natural creativity, spontaneity, wonder, and intuitive knowing. The creative child represents who you were before the world told you who you should be. She knows what brings you joy, what feels right in your body, and what your soul truly craves. Many women have learned to silence this aspect because her authentic expression was deemed too much, too loud, too different, or too inconvenient for others' comfort. Reconnecting with your creative child is essential for reclaiming your authentic feminine power. Common wound patterns and their adult manifestations. Understanding how childhood wounds show up in adult life helps you trace current struggles back to their origins. This awareness is the first step toward healing and integration. The invisible child wound. Children who were consistently overlooked, dismissed, or told to be quiet often develop patterns of making themselves small in adulthood. Women with this wound frequently struggle with visibility, speaking up in meetings, asking for what they need, or believing their thoughts and feelings matter. Sarah realized her habit of sitting in the back row at workshops and staying silent during discussions traced back to being the middle child in a chaotic household where the squeaky wheels got attention. Her inner child had learned that being invisible was safer than risking disapproval or taking up space that belonged to others. The overachiever wound. Some children learned that love was conditional on performance, grades, or achievements. These women often become high-functioning adults who struggle with rest, self-compassion, and believing they're worthy of love simply for existing. The overachiever wound creates a relentless inner critic that never allows you to feel satisfied with your accomplishments. Success feels empty because it never fills the childhood void of unconditional acceptance. The caretaker wound. Children who became responsible for managing adults' emotions or household functioning often carry this pattern into their relationships. They become the friend everyone calls during crisis, but struggle to ask for support themselves. Sarah discovered that her automatic response to give advice and fix problems stemmed from being her mother's emotional confidant from age 8. Her inner child believed that her worth depended on her ability to solve others' problems and keep everyone happy. Recognizing emotional triggers as wound indicators. Your emotional triggers are like archaeological markers pointing to buried wounds. When you have an intense reaction that seems disproportionate to the current situation, your inner child is likely responding from an old wound. Pay attention to situations that make you feel instantly small or powerless. People whose behavior creates immediate anger or fear. Scenarios where you suddenly feel like you're not enough. Moments when you revert to childhood coping strategies. The body's memory map. Your body holds the memory of your inner child's experiences. Physical sensations often provide clues about hidden wounds that your mind has forgotten or minimized. Tightness in your chest during certain conversations might signal your inner child's fear of abandonment. Stomach knots when someone raises their voice could indicate stored trauma around anger or conflict. Sudden fatigue in social situations might reveal your inner child's exhaustion from constant hypervigilance. Learning to listen to these body signals helps you identify when your inner child needs attention before emotional overwhelm occurs. The people-pleasing pattern as wound camouflage. People-pleasing often appears as a positive trait in our culture, especially for women. However, chronic people-pleasing usually masks deep wounds around worthiness, belonging, and fear of abandonment. Sarah came to realize that her constant need to say yes to every request at work stemmed from her 7-year-old self who learned that being helpful meant being loved. Her inner child had mapped the world as a place where her worth depended on her usefulness to others. Through gentle inner child work, she began to recognize when this wounded aspect was driving her decisions, allowing her to respond from her adult self instead of her frightened child. Creating space for wound recognition. Identifying your inner child's wounds requires gentle curiosity rather than harsh analysis. These wounds developed as creative survival strategies during times when you had limited resources and support. Approaching this work with compassion allows your inner child to feel safe enough to reveal herself. Judgment or attempts to quickly fix these patterns often send her deeper into hiding. As you begin mapping your inner child's landscape, remember that recognizing these wounds is not about blame or staying stuck in past pain. Instead, it's about understanding the protective strategies that once served you, so you can consciously choose more aligned responses as an adult. This foundational understanding prepares you for the deeper nervous system work we'll explore next, where you'll learn how these childhood patterns live in your body and how to create new neural pathways for healing and authentic self-expression. Ancestral wounds living in your nerves. Like fossils embedded in sedimentary rock, family patterns become encoded in our nervous system across generations. These inherited patterns of self-doubt, emotional suppression, and boundary violations aren't just psychological, they're stored in our bodies as automatic responses that trigger before conscious thought can intervene. Understanding ancestral wounds requires recognizing that your nervous system doesn't just belong to you. It carries the imprint of survival strategies developed by grandmothers, great-grandmothers, and generations of women who faced circumstances that required them to adapt, suppress, or sacrifice parts of themselves to survive. Nervous system inheritance. How trauma responses pass through epigenetic markers. Recent scientific research reveals that traumatic experiences can alter gene expression in ways that pass to future generations. This means your nervous system may carry activation patterns from events you never experienced personally. Your great-grandmother's fear during wartime, your grandmother's suppression during the Great Depression, or your mother's anxiety about speaking up in a male-dominated workplace can live in your cells as inherited hypervigilance, emotional numbing, or chronic people-pleasing. These epigenetic markers don't determine your destiny, but they create tendencies towards certain nervous system responses. You might find yourself feeling anxious in safe situations, shutting down emotionally when conflict arises, or experiencing physical symptoms that have no apparent medical cause. Patricia discovered this when she began tracking her panic attacks. Despite having a stable job and supportive relationship, her nervous system would suddenly flood with terror whenever she received an unexpected phone call. Through family exploration, she learned that her grandmother had received devastating news about her husband's death through a telephone call during World War II. Her grandmother's nervous system had encoded phones as danger signals, and this pattern had passed through 3 generations of women who experienced unexplained anxiety around unexpected calls. The biology of inherited survival strategies. Your ancestors developed nervous system patterns that helped them survive their specific circumstances. Women who lived through poverty learned to hoard resources and remain hypervigilant about scarcity. Those who faced domestic violence developed fawn responses and conflict avoidance. Women in oppressive social systems learned to make themselves small and agreeable. These patterns serve their original purpose, but they may no longer serve your current reality. Your nervous system might be responding to dangers that no longer exist, while missing opportunities for authentic expression and connection that are now available. Unconscious loyalty, the ways we repeat family patterns to maintain belonging. One of the most challenging aspects of ancestral wounds is unconscious loyalty. Part of your nervous system believes that breaking family patterns means betraying your lineage or losing your sense of belonging. This creates internal conflict when you attempt to heal generational wounds. You might experience guilt when you set boundaries your mother never could, anxiety when you pursue opportunities your grandmother was denied, or confusion when you allow yourself pleasure that generations of women before you suppressed. Your nervous system interprets these positive changes as threats to your connection with your family line. Patricia experienced this when she began therapy to address her chronic anxiety. As she developed healthier coping strategies and started speaking up for herself, she noticed her relationship with her mother becoming strained. Her nervous system began creating symptoms that pulled her back toward the familiar pattern of worry and self-doubt. She realized that maintaining her anxiety felt like maintaining her connection to her mother, who had also lived in constant worry. Breaking free required recognizing this unconscious loyalty and finding new ways to honor her lineage while creating healthier patterns. Somatic archaeology, reading the body's stored memories of generational wounds. Your body holds the fossil record of ancestral survival strategies. Physical sensations, posture patterns, and automatic reactions often reveal inherited nervous system programming that operates below conscious awareness. Common somatic markers of ancestral wounds include collapsed chest and rounded shoulders, often inherited from generations of women who learned to make themselves small or protect their hearts from repeated disappointment. Chronic jaw tension may indicate inherited patterns of swallowing words, suppressing anger, or holding back authentic expression. Digestive issues without medical cause can reflect ancestral patterns of swallowing emotions, chronic stress, or survival fears around scarcity. Shallow breathing often indicates inherited hypervigilance or the learned pattern of not taking up too much space. The throat chakra as ancestral storage. The throat area frequently holds generational patterns of silencing, particularly for women whose voices were systematically suppressed. You might notice chronic sore throats, thyroid issues, or the physical sensation of choking when you attempt to speak your truth. This isn't coincidence. Your nervous system learned from watching generations of women swallow their words to keep peace, avoid punishment, or maintain their safety. Your throat literally contracts to prevent you from speaking in ways that your ancestral nervous system perceives as dangerous. Breaking the cycle through nervous system awareness. Healing ancestral wounds requires developing the ability to recognize when inherited patterns are driving your responses versus when you're responding from your present moment awareness. This begins with noticing the difference between your activated nervous system and your regulated state. When Patricia noticed her chest tightening every time she considered setting a boundary with her mother, she was experiencing her grandmother's pattern of emotional suppression. 3 generations of women in her family had learned to swallow their voices to keep peace. Her body carried the fossil record of this survival strategy, automatically constricting her throat and chest whenever she moved toward authentic expression. Learning to breathe through these sensations became her pathway to breaking the generational cycle. The mother line transmission. The mother line carries particularly potent nervous system programming because of the intimate connection between mothers and daughters during early development. Your nervous system learned its first lessons about safety, love, and belonging through your mother's nervous system state. If your mother lived in chronic anxiety, your developing nervous system learned